Hello everyone and welcome to the Ticker.com's news channel on YouTube. On this channel, we review stock markets and discuss financial news, market trends, and economic data from Wall Street to Global Street. So let's dive in. We begin our review of the global economy with key releases in the US, Europe, China, and Japan. Stock market indices struggled on Wall Street as investors adjusted rate cut expectations and reviewed another batch of positive economic data. The U.S. Federal Reserve held its interest rate range between 5.25% and 5.5% as widely anticipated, signaling rate cuts are likely to be delayed amid resilient economic conditions. The Fed held rates for the sixth time in a row since July 2023 after lifting rates 11 times since March 2022. Moreover, the U.S. economy added 175,000 jobs in April, fewer than 315,000 in March. The unemployment rate held steady at 3.9%, and wage gains slowed to an annual pace of 3.9% after rising as high as 4.5% in January. In the euro area, the consumer price index held steady at 2.4% in April, largely reflecting lower energy and food prices. Inflation has significantly declined in the eurozone, but prices are still rising, and consumers are stretched amid elevated prices and high interest rates. Core inflation, which excludes food and energy prices, slowed to 2.7% but stayed above the ECB's target rate of 2%, despite multiple rate hikes over the last 2 years. In other economic news around the world, two manufacturing surveys in China highlighted an uneven rebound in the sector, but the service sector showed a sustained expansion. China's policymakers are struggling to keep economic growth near 5% amid weak consumer confidence, falling prices, and steady outflow of capital. Another large economy in Asia, Japan, is also struggling to keep its manufacturing sector activities expanding as the sector recovers from devastating earthquake earlier in the year. Let us review key events in global bond, currency, and commodity markets last week. The yield on the 10-year U.S. Treasury eased to below 4.5% after the U.S. economy added fewer jobs in April. Crude oil fell 5% to $79 a barrel after prospects of wider conflict in the Middle East faded amid signs of a robust U.S. crude supply. Natural gas prices in Europe remained range-bound between 28 euros and 30 euros per megawatt hour amid expectations of normal seasonal weather patterns and ongoing supply worries despite higher flows from Norway. The euro edged higher to $1.08 amid worries of diverging rate paths between the US and the euro area. The yen rebounded to 153 against the US dollar on the suspected market intervention for 2 days in a row after the currency crossed 160 mark against the US dollar. We now shift our attention to major stock markets in the U.S., Europe, and Asia. The S&P 500 index and the Nasdaq composite lagged direction as traders digested positive economic news, Fed Chair Powell's post-meeting comments, and moderating but tight labor conditions. European markets declined in 4 of the last 5 weeks after the rate anxieties were compounded by persistent weakness in the manufacturing sector. The Nikkei 225 stock average slightly rebounded in a holiday-shortened week, tracking gains in tech stocks in New York amid expectations of higher earnings for exporters in the face of sharp decline in the yen. Hong Kong indices led the world market indices for the second week in a row and entered bull market territory after corporations announced stock buybacks, dividends, and strong quarterly results. Indian market indices declined as investors turned cautious despite strong quarterly results from leading vehicle makers, non-bank financial companies, and industrial conglomerates. Let us shift our attention to merger deals, market movers, and earnings updates from leading companies last week. Apple soared 6% after maker of popular iPhone devices reported better than expected sales and earnings in its fiscal second quarter. The company also announced a $110 billion stock repurchase plan. Expedia decreased 12% after the online travel booking platform reported better than expected revenue in the first quarter and offered a muted annual revenue outlook. Amgen soared 14% after the biotech company reported better than expected quarterly results and said it would move its injectable weight loss drugs into phase 3 trials. Crédit Agricole and Société Générale rose after two leading French banks reported quarterly results that surpassed expectations. DoorDash plunged 10% after the food delivery company reported a wider than expected loss in its latest quarter. Qualcomm increased 5% after the advanced chip maker surpassed earnings expectations and issued strong guidance for the current quarter. Starbucks dropped 13% after the expensive coffee chain operator reported weaker than expected revenue and earnings in the first quarter. Amazon.com rose 2% after the online retailer and cloud service provider reported better than expected revenue and earnings in the first quarter after advertising revenues soared 24%. McDonald's decreased 1% after the fast food company reported mixed quarterly results and sales took a hit from the boycott in the Middle East. Coca-Cola edged higher after the beverage company reported better than expected quarterly results and raised its annual outlook. In the week ahead, U.S. corporate quarterly results are likely to dominate the news cycle amid a light economic calendar. About 1,100 companies in the U.S. are expected to announce their results, including Airbnb, Goodyear Tire, Ferrari, Walt Disney, and Wynn Resorts. On the economic front, the U.S. investors are looking forward to weekly jobless claims, consumer sentiment index, and monthly federal government budget data. In Europe, the Bank of England is expected to hold its key rate steady, and the central banks of Poland and Sweden are set to announce their rate decisions. German factory orders, international trade balance updates from France and Germany, and the Eurozone retail sales are also on tap. In Asia, investors are looking forward to the release of international trade data from China and current account updates from China and Japan. India is scheduled to release its industrial production data for March, and the Reserve Bank of Australia is expected to hold rates steady as well. You can review daily U.S. and global financial market news, stock movers, earnings releases, SEC filings, and economic updates on ticker.com and 123jump.com. You can find the latest financial books on Rudera.com, keep up with financial industry events on eventsinamerica.com, review ETF and mutual fund performance and in-depth profiles on tickerfunds.com, and review market updates and stock movers in India on niveshak.in. That is all for today, and we will see you next week.